No. That's what I'm trying to tell.
Okay, so I want to welcome everyone to America's Islamic Heritage Museum. I'm really excited about this presentation by my brother and longtime friend now, ain't it? You know, brother Akil Fahd.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, he's a researcher and he's here to talk about Professor Muhammad Ezzaldeen, which is really, always fascinating to hear about him, really the pioneer of what many would call Sunni Islam or Orthodox Islam. So no further ado, I'm going to hand it off to you, brother Akil. You lead the way, and anytime you need to refer to something, just let me know and I'll screen share it.
Okay, shukran. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Jazakallah khairan for watching. But before I begin, I would like if we can just for a moment offer dua for Professor Ezzaldeen, as well as the all of the other Muslims, pioneers who have came to Islam before us, and inshallah, maybe Allah will answer our dua on their behalf. And particularly, I would like for you also, to make a dua for a wonderful sister in Islam who was like a ummi to me. She was very dear to the brothers and sisters in Detroit. We call her Ummi Aisha. And inshallah, if we just bear with me, just if we make a dua for Ummi Aisha and all of the pioneering Muslims, inshallah, before we begin.
Still won't make? No. I'm seeing another different link.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Again, as I was saying, Jazakallah khairan for all of you for attending. Where Khalil and Brother Amir Muhammad asked me to do this presentation, alhamdulillah, I quickly agreed, even though this is not really my forte, the video stuff and that, but I felt it was very important that Professor Ezzaldeen, as he was called during his time, that he be mentioned in the discourse, the wider discourse, when we talk about Islam in America. And the thing I want to discuss also is that often we know the narrative of how Islam came into America through certain paths. Certain different people have different paths to come into orthodoxy in America. But I would be remiss before we start this conversation without mentioning Dus Muhammad Ali and Imam or Sheikh Sati Majid, right? Sometimes he went by Reverend Majid, but most often in the documentation, he's listed as Sati Majid or Sati Muhammad, right? These were brothers who, one was from the Sudan, and he was a very dark complected man. He would look African to you and I, but his people, his tribe, right, were Arab, right? They had an Arab identity, and as well as Dus Muhammad Ali. Dus Muhammad Ali was a teacher of Marcus Garvey, and he was a Muslim who came to America also and spread Islam, particularly in Detroit, right? I'm not sure. I know he operated in St. Louis for a while and in New York, but I don't have any documented evidence that he ever established any masjids or gave dawah, right, where he actually had congregation. But in Detroit, Deuce Muhammad Ali had several places in the city where he would go and give dawah, and the people, would offer salat, right? So, and Deuce Muhammad Ali came to Detroit in about 1926, right? So he was operating in Detroit from like 1926 to like about 1928, 29, right? Sadi Majid, he was operating in Detroit in the 19 teens, before 1920, right? Which predates the Ahmadiyya coming into Detroit. That's important, right? So before Ahmadiyya were in Detroit, there were already Orthodox Muslims from the African continent, Sadi Majid, who was interacting with both the immigrants in Detroit as well as the African American. And this is important because both Deuce Muhammad Ali and Sadi Majid had they had involvement in Turkish charitable organizations. Deuce Muhammad Ali operated with one of the an orphanage, a charitable organization that worked with Turkish orphans. And Sadi Majid, of course, he was the president of the Detroit chapter of the Red Crescent, right? And he was actually responsible for building the first cemetery, Muslim cemetery in Michigan, in the Detroit area. He helped to organize that. So they were already, like I said, and all of this was like in the early 1920s as far as Sadi Majid, but Deuce Muhammad Ali came to Detroit in 1925. And the reason why I'm prefacing this is because the reason why I'm prefacing this is because the narrative that we often hear is that there was no Islam being spoken in Detroit prior to 1930, right? So that's just not factually true, right? So we have to establish that. So moving to Professor Ezzaldeen, he was born like in the South, and like many men from the South, they often left the South because of the worst oppression that they received and racism that was aimed at Black men in the South, especially if you spoke out, that was aimed at Black men in the South. So many of them migrated north to, come from under that. But as we all know, the North had its share of racism too, but it was just not as overt as it was in the South. So he initially he moved to Chicago, and he became like a teacher. And while he was in Chicago, that's when he got involved with Mr. Drew Ali and Mr. Drew Ali organization, the Moorish Science Temple, right, of America. And I mean, they have many different acronyms now, as which, but more or less it was the Moorish Science Temple of America. But the documents sometimes vary as to the actual naming of it. But in Chicago, that's where he got involved, and he organized. At that time, he was going by Lomax Bey, because his original birth name was James Lomax. And when he went to Chicago, of course, he was James Lomax. Well, once he joined Mr. Drew Ali's organization, he became Lomax Bey, because what they would do is append either Bey or L at the end of their names, you know what I'm saying, in that regard. Basically, and accepting, and this is an important thing too, is that they would accept the nationality of Moorish, right? Leaving away from these notions of whether being called Negro or those terminology, right? To get away from that, they adopted the nationality of Moorish, being Moorish, right? And that whole framework that Mr. Joali set up, he began to follow that, and he became very good, right? So he would proselytize in the Chicagoland area, and he brought in a lot of people. So when the Joali decided to expand into the Detroit area, he had Lomax Bey go to Detroit. And so upon him going to Detroit, that's when he became a governor, meaning like he was, one of the more high-ranking people within the organization, right? And so when he went to Detroit, he formed a temple in Detroit, in and amongst this what I would call like a milieu that was going on in Detroit of Islam, right? You had all these different types of Islam, people proselytizing Islam. You had many different immigrants, all in what we call, many Detroiters we call the Black Bottom, right? This is an area in the Lower East Side of Detroit. If anybody's familiar with where Detroit is at now, this area, a lot of the streets have been changed. Of course, Hastings no longer exists in that area no more. The Illinois Street, that doesn't exist anymore in that area. But in that area is where you had a lot of male Muslims that were from other areas who were living because they had tenement housing and stuff like that was available to them, because many of them could not just go out and move amongst white people either, right? So they were limited to those areas, particularly from Turkish background. You had few from the Desi community, which all of that back then was just called India, right? It was no Pakistan or anything like that, or Bangladesh. That didn't exist as nations, but the people, still, live, right? So they were, Bangladeshi people, Pakistani people, primarily men, right, that lived in those areas. And so you had all these different groups that, they were still there and they practiced Islam. Many of them worked at the Ford Motor Company, because Ford, even though, he was, friendly with the Nazis, he still was willing to give anyone who worked the equal amount of pay for equal amount of work, right? So this was mean that a lot of immigrants as well as African Americans went to work for Ford Motor Company. Again, I'm giving you the understanding so that you understand that it was not just this clear vacuum of Islam that Lomax Bey came to Detroit amongst. Islam was already there. People were already practicing Islam, right? But more or less, they were doing so with their fellow compatriots, people from their same countries. They were trying to integrate, right? There was one instance where they created a masjid in Detroit on what is now Victor Street in Detroit. It's actually the first masjid documented that was built from the ground up as a masjid in America. That's just the reality, right? And that was in 1920, right, that happened. So again, when Lomax Bey comes to Detroit, you're talking now late 20s, you have all these other Muslims that are interacting. Now he's a black man, saying they're speaking about Islam, but this coming from the Moorish Science Temple understanding of what Islam was, not Orthodox Islam, right? But it's still attracting more and more Black people because, for one, the Black men already were there. They were already introduced to these other men who were there, right? Through these other immigrants. But now you have a Black voice advocating similar things. And then they also had a program of self-help, right? And all of this was prior to the Great Depression, right? So people were still, wanting to, see the American dream and achieve and do stuff, right? So you need economics, right? It's no different than it is today. You can't create anything, community, anything without economics. So when he went there, all these people willing to work, all these people contributing. And so what that ended up happening was Detroit became the most prominent and wealthy of all the Moorish Science Temple chapters, including Chicago. They had restaurants, grocery stores, cleaners, right? And then they were also selling the different goods that was being produced by, oils and elixirs and stuff like that, that was being generated by the Moorish Science Temple organization, right? So now when you look at this, Detroit now, for the Moorish Science Temple, is becoming a cash cow, right? It has the most members, and it has the most economics created. Of course, you had other places that the Moorish Science existed, right? New York, Pittsburgh, primarily, and Pittsburgh was a big stronghold for them as well. Cleveland, Milwaukee, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, like different places, right? And they had a number of temples, right? But of the temples, Detroit was temple, quote unquote, temple number 4, but it was the most prominent in terms of wealth. So, Clay, you have a question? Okay. Is the video still going, Khalil?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Oh, okay.
Keep going.
Oh, okay. All right. So, then, around, I would say, maybe after being there, maybe a year, 2 years, late 1928 is when Governor at the time, Governor Lomax Blay, is starting to get involved with the local Muslims, right? He's beginning to interact with the local Muslims, and now he's beginning to understand what true Islam is. So at the beginning of 1929, 2 things happen. One, Sadi Majid decides that he's going to go to Al-Azhar. He's going to go back to, because he was, like I said, he was operating in Detroit, Buffalo, and New York, right? Primarily, and Pittsburgh. Can't leave that out, right? Sadi Majid, he was operating, he had an organization in Pittsburgh, he had an organization in Detroit, and he was still operating in Buffalo, right? But he decided that he was going to go to Egypt, to Al-Azhar, to get a fatwa, right? To get a fatwa against the Ahmadiyya and the Moorish Science and some of these other organizations that were claiming to practice Islam, right, or using the Islamic title, but they were not practicing Islam. Again, this was in 1929. So he goes to Egypt to obtain, and he got the fatwa, right? But the U.S. government would not allow him back in. He couldn't obtain a visa in order to return back to America. So he was basically left in Egypt, and then he still did some more work in Egypt and Sudan, but that's another story. So now But then also in 29, Governor Lomax Bey decides that he is going to lead the Moorish Science Temple into true Islam, and he tells Mr. Drew Ali that he's going to lead the people, and that he was not going to send any more money back to Chicago, and that basically they were going to do their thing in Detroit, but he was going to try to lead Islam, the Moorish Science Temple group to Islam. And of course, you know how that go, right? So the Goon Squad from Chicago goes, hey man, listen, you know how our people operate, right? So I know everybody's gonna say this or whatever, but it's factual. They went to Detroit to try to unseat him so that he couldn't do that. And then to top it off, he had decided that he was going to start a new organization called the what they put in the documents was Mohammedan Church. Now that doesn't mean that he called it Mohammedan Church, but this is what the American government authorities put in the documents, that he was going to start a Mohammedan church. So what they did, once they saw those documents of him forming a new Muslim organization, they then informed Noble Drew Ali, right? So they told, yes, the government told Noble Drew Ali that Governor Lomax Bey was forming this other organization, because he wasn't going by a different name at that point. He wasn't going. So what ended up happening by March 29, the Goon Squad comes to Detroit, and of course, shootouts occur. Right, this happened. All this is documented. Shootouts occur. Right. So one narrative is that, after that, there was an accusation that he was trying to steal money, and so the Moorish Science Temple, some of the Moorish Science Temple members working with the law enforcement, American law enforcement, charged Brother Lomax Bey with embezzlement. But the government, when they went through all of the records and all of the monies, there was no embezzlement, right? So he was totally exonerated of that. In fact, when the FBI went back to look at those records to try to pull him into, give them some pretext to try to get him in the 1940s, they themselves also recognized that he was totally exonerated of that, and there was no theft or of any other money was taken, right? So now this happened in like March of 1929. So from March of 29 up until the early 1930s, Governor Lomax Bey stayed, or Professor Ezzaldeen stayed and remained in Detroit. Many believe that, as the narrative is told, that he stole money and he ran to Turkey. But that is not true, as I'm going to prove, that he did not leave America. He did not leave America until May of 1930. So if you can, I think that would be screen number 2, Khalil, where it talks about him. He changed his name to.
Okay. You want to give me 1 second? Okay, so you said where he changed his name, number 2.
Yeah,
okay,
that was
just
2.
1 second. All right, let's see. 2 says calls Negroes to Islam. Is it that one?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to that. Screen share. Is this the one? This is what?
Yes.
This is number 2.
So
Yes.
yeah. So this is where he had already traveled. He had just traveled to Turkey, and he was going by the name of Ali Mehmed Bey, right? And basically, when he went there, he was talking about, and he was telling about how many other families that was willing to come with him to Turkey, and he wanted to basically make hijra so that they can establish Islam in Turkey. Now, the question is, well, why would he go to Turkey? There's other African countries and all of this. Again, the reason why he went to Turkey is because with his interaction with Deuce Muhammad Ali and Saadi Majid, they already had connections in Turkey. They were already doing charitable work with Turkish organizations, not other like African organizations and stuff like that. So his first connection with overseas quite naturally would be with a place where there was already a pre-existing connection. And so when he got over there, of course, the American government didn't like that, right? And so what ended up happening is that Turkey did not grant him, they did not grant him like this big land that he wanted to operate while he was over in Turkey. And also, if you could show the next one, Khalil. But if you notice in that first one, where it does say that this Ahmed Bey was his original name was James Lomax, right? Because he did not change his name on his passport when he left. He changed his name. His name is on his traveling passport was James Lomax when he traveled from New York. But once he got into Istanbul, into Turkey, that's when he changed his name. So
it's just one. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, that's what he wanted to do, right? He wanted to get some land for the Muslims and just basically have the Muslims leave America, right? Make hijra, right? And I don't want to go into a whole discourse on hijra, but basically, it is when you travel from a land that is not hospitable to Muslims back to a land or a Dar al-Islam or a home for Islam in another territorial space. So that's what he was attempting to do. But it did not work. Now, one of the things, again, going back to this narrative of him stealing money and that he left because, everybody had, he had turned on everybody and nobody supported him and nobody was with him. If you look at the other articles, it actually tells you that he was traveling with a group of people, including men and women and children, right? So the whole narrative that he somehow ran to Turkey or he had to hastily leave Detroit is just not true, right? When the Goon Squad came for the Morris Science Temple against him, they shot it out. That's what happened, right? This is what happened. And so he didn't leave Detroit. He stayed there, right? There were no more incidents. And then he went to Turkey, of course, in an attempt to make hijra. And he had these other Muslim families that was with him, men and women and children. So around 1931, like the end of 1931, after being there almost 2 years or so, realizing that they were not going to be successful there, he then left and went to Egypt. When he went to Egypt, right, he went and he worked under the auspices of, it was an organization called the Young Muslim association. It was basically like a Muslim take of the YMCA, but they were called the Young Muslim Men's Association, right? The YMMA, right? And basically it was sort of the same thing, getting men and to help people, keep their Islam and educate them, right? But this was mainly geared for the Egyptian society, but they also took him in. And then while he was there, over a period of time, the people that were with him, they also traveled to Egypt with him. And how we know that this happened in that manner, because there was an American judge who was in Egypt who wrote about it. He wrote about these. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so it was an American judge, right, who had been over to Egypt, and he would just write different things about the Egyptian society. And this particular thing, because he was from Louisiana, he was French, he was Creole, and he still had, racism with him. So for him, this drew his attention to see these African Americans that were coming over to Egypt, claiming their an Islamic identity, talking about communities in Detroit, in New York, Pittsburgh, like they are telling the people of other Muslim of communities of African American. And of course, the Egyptians, they were flabbergasted about it, because they basically didn't believe that it was Muslims. And even to this day, when you look at America, people don't believe that it's practicing indigenous Muslims in America. So when they were going over there, this caught his attention, and he wrote about it. And it was in an article that came out in 1933 in a Catholic magazine, of all things. But they wrote about these people traveling from coming into Egypt in 1932, right? So we know that they traveled with him to Egypt, well, traveled after him to Egypt. But what we don't know, or what I haven't been able to document, is when did those individuals, or if those individuals came back to America, or did they just kind of meld into the Egyptian society? That part I don't know, but I know he came back. He came back after staying there for about 5 years, learning Arabic, learning Islam. He came back to America in 1936. So in 1936, now he's back in America. You have different organizations that are all up and running that are claiming Islam. You have, by this time, you have the Moorish Science Temple that was operating. You had the NOI that was operating, and you had the Ahmadiyya that were operating. So what he initially did was try to set up a school in the New York area, in Harlem. And that didn't pan out. He also began to work with a couple of the Moorish Science Temple that were in New York, and began to teach them Islam and Arabic, right? In fact, the temple he was working with was Temple 41. That was the one that's pretty much documented, right? That he was working with them. But then he started going back around to different communities in America and telling the people about Islam, and particularly like people that were in Moorish Science Temple, people that were in Ahmadiyya. He's coming to them and talk, because he's already had relationships with many of these people prior to him leaving. And some of these people had interactions with Sati Majid and Deuce Muhammad Ali. But as I said earlier, Sati Majid, he couldn't get a visa to come back to America when he left in 1929. And Deuce Muhammad Ali, he just once he finally left, he went to Nigeria and just said he was just done with, coming back to America as well, right? But those people that were initially following them, they didn't like keep intact those organizations. They just kind of left and went to other organizations. So when he came back, when Professor Ezzaldeen, when he came back, he was now Muhammad Ezzaldeen now, right? And then the people began to call him Professor Ezzaldeen because he was at that time the most prominent African American that knew Arabic and that could teach Islam. So when he went around to these other places, Khalil, I can't hear you. Are you saying something?
No, I'm listening.
Okay, so as he started going around to these other organizations and then reattracting people back to Islam. Alhamdulillah. One particular incident, he goes back to one of the Ahmadiyya temples, and it didn't get like confrontational, like physical or anything, but it came to a head because a portion of the people just decided that, hey, we no longer want to follow the Ahmadiyya. We want to follow, Orthodox Islam. And so when they did that, they actually went to court. And then all of this is documented. They went to court, and because the majority of the people were ruling that, decided that this is what they wanted to do, the court intervened and had them win all of the rights to all of the monies and stuff that they had already accumulated, rather than them just leaving the organization and leaving all of the wealth and stuff that they had built. The people that when they decided that they wanted to change, they want to bring the things that they had accumulated with themselves as part of that organization. So, alhamdulillah, they were able to do that, and that's documented, right? And he also went back to Detroit, of course, and there was a Dino Elahi. Oh, I skipped a part. In 1938, he set up. He went to Camden because he wasn't able to set up the documents in New York. He doesn't really go into the reasons why, but he wasn't able to do it. So, like in the 5-borough area. But when he went in Camden in 1938, August of 1938, that's when he set up the Dino Elahi Universal Arabic Association, right? The Dino Elahi Universal Arabic Association. And he set that up because now he had adopted, upon his return, he had adopted the nationality of Hamitic Arab, right? He was saying that our people, we were basically, Arabs, descended from Ham, and that, we should, adopt the Arabic language, going back to a language that our ancestors spoke, right? So this is what his what he was teaching at this time, right? And some people object to it, like, okay, why are you going to adopt to being an Arab and all of this? And that's debatable. That could be debated. But one thing that's not debatable is that the Prophet ﷺ said that being an Arab is from the tongue, right? It's from what you speak, the language that you speak, and the culture that you adopt to. It's not a skin color or a race. But that's neither here nor there. But the reality is that that's the organization that he formed. And then the people that he was going back and giving dawah to, primarily people he had already been interacting with, they themselves also began to adopt his understanding of Islam and the Dino Elahi Universal Arabic Association, which was a national organization. It was never meant to be like a one local place. It was always designed, and how he envisioned it is to have the Dino Lahi Universal Arabic Association operating, and then have these school of wisdoms that he formed that would be basically teaching the people Islam, and giving them culture, as a part of that. And he set up
can I ask a question with respect to that real quick?
Yes.
Hopefully you want to lose your thought. So are you saying that with respect to, when you say, all right, they adopted kind of being known as Hamitic Arabs, did that come with teaching the culture of current Arabs at the time, or did he try to connect them to other to the cultures in between? Obviously, what he's connecting to where we were ultimately, if you get my drift.
Right. Yeah. So basically, there was nothing that he said, okay, so let's go try to be Egyptian, or let's go try to be Saudi, right? It wasn't like that type of a thing. It was more of a thing that, hey, stop calling yourself Negroes. Stop calling yourself nigga. That's not us. That's something that has been put on us. We don't accept that. We don't accept the title Negro. We don't accept, the N-word. We don't accept that. So that's what he was moving towards, and basically like carving out an identity that Americans can adopt, right, without being other people. If you understand what I'm saying. There's no different. There's no different if you look at what Imam Wardeen Rahimahullah, when he said, okay, we're going to be Bilalians, right? Imam Wardeen wasn't saying, hey, let's all go back to Saudi and we're going to be like Bilal. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like that. It was just like, no, this is an identity that we can formulate around ourselves and remain independent of other people.
So that was kind of his reaction to the oppression in a way. You're saying that was his theology. It was his answer to us getting out of the identity crisis that we had. Okay.
Right. Because we're still navigating that right now, right? The whole notion of identity, culture, like we're still navigating that, and we're almost, 100 years from when he started advocating Islam, right? This is what, 1921. You see? 2021. I said 1921. 2021, right? And we're still having these same similar discussions. But he wasn't advocating leaving our people and totally disassociating from our people. He was advocating that, hey, stop calling yourself Negro and nigga, because that's not us. And in fact, when there was I'm glad you mentioned that, actually. There was a newspaper article that one of the times he did an Eid, Dino Lahi did an Eid in Buffalo, and it was covered. And they referred to them as Negro Muslims, right? And Professor Ezzaldeen wrote back to the newspaper, and they published the article that there's no such thing as a Negro Muslim. You know what I'm saying? That we're not Negroes. There's no such thing as a Negro. You know what I'm saying? We are Hamitic Arabs. So he was very secure on that, not being a Negro or the other N-word, right? He was adamant about articulating that for our people and establishing a national identity for our people that could connect. So that's why he had these different chapters in different cities, and that they will all come together. Another thing that he did was try to bring the Muslims together, right? So in 1943, now he's come back, he's gone around, he's creating these chapters, like including Detroit, right? There was a Dino Lahi, he referred to them as units, right? There was the Dino Lahi Universal Arab Association unit in Detroit. There was a unit in Jacksonville, Florida. There were units in Pittsburgh. There was units in um, uh, uh, Philadelphia, and then there was in the state of New Jersey also. Right, he had set up a whole village, Ezzaldeen village, which they had come and where they would gather. But then there was this big picture. If you do, you have that picture, Khalil, of the all standing in front of the YMCA.
Let me see. Let's see if I can grab that one. This looks like the YMCA. Let me see if this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me share screen. Is this it right here?
Yes, this is it, okay. Right? So when they met here, for this meeting, it was Muslims from all around. He was trying to gather Muslims from all the different organizations to get them to come together and have a greater unity. And what's interesting about this is, if you notice, they have the cross-sorted. This is one of the older cross-sorted Saudi flags, right? And he was saying basically, this is our Shahada, right? He wasn't saying that we give an allegiance to Saudi Arabia or anything like that. He was saying that with the Shahadatain of La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, that's what's going to unite us, right? And so he brought all of these different groups together. And in this picture particularly, you have Imam Wali Akram out of Cleveland that's standing next to him. And next to Imam Wali Akram is Sheikh Dawood Faisal. All of these men look to him as a mentor because he preceded them in Islamic understanding as well as the understanding of Arabic. Now, what you should also know about this meeting is that the government had the YMCA bugged prior to the meeting. They knew the meeting was going to occur, so they went in and they had the whole the building, bugged, and they basically wiretapped all of the meetings and stuff that he was saying. So some of his speeches and excerpts from what he was saying is recorded, and it's in some of the FBI documents. But the actual recordings or any stuff like that, I wasn't able to get through the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, they said they no longer have them or whatnot. So, but we do know that they did actually make the recordings. Now, did they keep them? Did they destroy them? That's not known. But what is known is that at this organization, at this juncture in 1943, this is when he was trying to gather all of the different communities together that were not Adin Lahi, but that were still trying to practice normative Orthodox Islam in America. So Professor Ezzaldeen, he was a true pioneer, right? And I mean, and there's so many other things that we could go into. I know it's getting later, but yeah. So, one other thing I do want to touch on. So he was Professor Ezzaldeen was dynamic in another regard too. As I mentioned, they created Ezzaldeen Village in New Jersey, where where members of Dino Lahi live on their own land. They also bought a land in upstate New York, what they call Jabul Arabia, or the mountain of the Arabs, right? And again, to establish some sort of autonomy for the people, where they didn't have to endure racism or the oppression from racism, and they could try to live a little bit more freer from typical life in the inner cities that poor people encounter. So with that, if there's any questions or anything like that, I'll be willing to entertain those.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
This is Brother Amin El Khalil in New Jersey. You've spoken
Assalamu
with me.
alaikum.
I am the former vice president of the AUAA Newark unit. And alhamdulillah, I just happened to catch this biography about Muhammad Ezzaldeen. I came through this organization over 45 years ago.
Alhamdulillah.
And my aunts and uncles who were students of Professor Ezzaldeen are still alive, although they're over 95 years old. In regards to Professor Ezzaldeen, a lot of things were misunderstood. One, this Hamitic Arab concept that many of us are misunderstanding. We have to understand that back in those days, and we're talking about these days of darkness, that to be called African or anything like that was degrading. He was trained in Egypt about the ancient Hamitic people who were given divine rights. We are a divinely guided people. This is what he told us. This is nothing that he made up on a blackboard. That we are the descendants of Ismail. We are the descendants of Ibrahim. And on that flag that you showed of 1943, those are the crossing swords of Ismail. Those are not anything to do with Saudi Arabia. I grew up with that flag. Those are the crossing swords of Ismail. And my uncles had it in their home. I don't know where it is now, but it has nothing to do with Saudi Arabia. It has to deal with our divine lineage. And that when Professor Ezzaldeen approached the United States government, he was told, go and find your people. Okay. And they laughed at him because you will never get them because we have destroyed these people so much. So he was given a national charter, August 16th, 1938 in Camden, New Jersey. For years, as I grew up, it was in Ezzaldeen Village, which is part of Hamilton, New Jersey. Ezzaldeen Village no longer exists. It's gone. I went there several times in my youth, and I brought my family. Last time I went there, it was only one family left. Everyone else, the kids had grown up and left, had sold the homes, and to go there now is a completely different environment. The Muslims raised their own food. They fed and clothed themselves, and they had their own property and their own land rights, and they were recognized by the government there. The first American Muslim mayor came through that community, Mansour Elwan. He was the mayor of Chislehurst, New Jersey. This is back in the 70s, way before you heard about all these other mayors of other towns coming through the AAUAA. So please get it clear. This Hamitic Arab, we are the descendants of Hamun. Ham is one of the sons of who? Noah. He had 4 sons, Cush, Put, Mizraim, and Canaan. We don't know about them. Why? Because the history's been erased. But only the AAUAA were teaching you about your divine right. You have a divine right to this way of life, and that has been smothered by this evil system. We have to understand that. All right. And when you go home, as you know, I say go home, you have to figure out where your home is. You will be recognized as for who you are. Now, I could tell you myself, I went home and the people knew who I was. Why? Because I went home with my deen straight, my tongue straight, and my name straight, and my behavior straight. They looked at me and they knew who I was. And this was over 30 years ago. okay? We have to understand this. This is more than a modern view of Black nationalism. The modern view of Black nationalism cannot touch the divine register of who we are. You must understand, this system brought our ancestors here on purpose to destroy us and bury us for over 300 years, to eliminate the foretelling of Islam in the future that they knew would rise here in America. They knew it would come through us. Their job is to keep us down, buried, ignorant, singing, dancing, on drugs, killing each other, and not knowing who you really are, and carrying the slave master's name, carrying his religion, and carrying his mentality. He helped set up the systems which have destroyed our people that we carry on today. Don't you think that someone's not sitting in a room deciding the N-word is in all these songs, destroying what we think about our own women and our own selves? Well, he had the foresight years ago, but now we're so tied up that we don't know we don't know ourselves. We really don't. But Professor Ezzaldeen was a man way ahead of his time. He's buried here in New Jersey in a barely marked grave. And may Allah bless him for all the people that he taught. I am one of the people who came through him. And I came through, him and my wife, we both came. She came through Masjid Allah. Masjid Allah came out of the AUAA in the early 60s and set up a masjid here in Newark. I came through the Youngstown unit of the AUAA in the 70s. And I came back east to study with Haji Sham Jabber, who did the janazah for Malcolm X. A lot of people don't know that there was the AUAA that was talking with Malcolm before he went to make Hajj. People don't know that, okay? And his universal view, I'm talking about Malcolm X's universal view of Islam expanded. Why? Because he was talking that we are part of this world. We're not supposed to be the way that we are now. You see us in a very low position and acting badly. I'm trying to be politically correct and nice.
Thank you, Sheikh.
So
I know you and I speak. You speak much more freely, so I'm definitely appreciating how you're speaking now.
Yeah. Well, no, we're gonna. I'm not going to. I'm not going to lower the standard. The standard is high, and this is one of the things that the Professor Ezzaldeen taught our people to aim, excuse me, and keep a high standard of your identity and your practice of this deed, that we are not, like you said, Negroes or Ns or anything else. We are, and I hope the people who are listening to this hear me clearly, we are the descendants of Ham. We are the descendants through his great lineage. You are not jigaboos, N's, or any other names they want to make up. And as for Blacks, show me a Black land with a Black language, and I want to hear what you got to say. But they've misguided us for a long time, this system, to get you away from what this is about. We're supposed to be able to feed, clothe, shelter, guard, and protect ourselves. This is part of the deen, not just talking Arabic and wearing certain clothing, okay? We're supposed to have communities where we can produce for ourselves, not be so dependent on the system that we're just puppets on a string, okay?
Right.
This was his thinking. He, of course, but I'm talking about when I say he, I mean Professor Ezzaldeen, set up units nationwide, outside of the urban areas, and so they could have a sense of independence. I could tell you in Ezzaldeen Village, where when I used to go, everybody on the two main streets, Cedar Avenue and I'm trying to remember the second street. They were all Muslims. They were all Muslims. They had, some of them built their homes. And when I say Muslims, I'm talking about Muslims like you and me, American, right here. They left.
Right. No, absolutely.
They
I
left
was
Newark.
hoping Imam Dawood might join us from Jabu Arabia, but mashallah.
Another time, inshallah. But what I'm trying to say
Inshallah.
is that, but the Buffalo unit at the time had broken away from the UAA and established their own charter, independent of the national charter. And for several years, there was some infighting, and they were on their own. They still exist, alhamdulillah. And let me say this about Jabal Arabia. The story that was told to me is that Professor Ezzaldeen, when he came back, he was looking for the Muslims to restart and to organize. And in one of his journeys, he ran into a woman who was Caucasian who gave him the land for Jabal Arabia. Over 250 acres, I believe. Yeah. So this was not that they went and bought it. It was actually a gift by someone who believed in Professor and his mission. Okay.
No, they brought it, Sheikh. They brought it. They brought it.
They bought it. This is what was told to me. This was what was told to me years ago.
But they actually, because anytime you have land records that exchange hands or any real estate holding, it's documented, right?
That's good.
So but it was
good.
It was actually,
it's good that you have your documentation because there's a lot of misunderstandings about different things about Professor Ezzaldeen.
Exactly.
There's a lot of conflicts. There was a lot of infighting, and I was very fortunate also to be company with his widow, Karima Ezzaldeen. A lot of people didn't know that she lived here in Newark, in the Ironbound section of Newark. She passed away over 20 years ago. And I used to travel with her down to Ezzaldeen Village, travel with her to Ohio with the units in Ohio. Now, excuse me. I really am glad to hear that you're talking about Professor Muhammad Ezzaldeen. May Allah be pleased with his efforts. And also that it opens up the eyes of us Americans as to really reset our goals and try to come together and get over these small, petty differences we have. We have a mission in front of us. I think that's what we have to understand. And that we have to hold on to ourselves, hold on to our communities and our children, and try to promote a unity, because this system is going to do everything they can to erase us. And that's where we're going to have a degree of unity and understanding where many of us have a common history. Okay. Many groups came out of the AUAA. The Cuba Institute in Philadelphia under Anwar Muhammad, who's the son of Nafia Muhammad, who was also, I'm trying to remember the man, Nasser Ahmed was. He was Professor Ezzaldeen's right-hand man, and from what I understand. This group came out of the UAA, Dino Universal Arabic Association. So, there's a lot of connections, there's a lot of history. We have to understand this. And also, we have to understand that this is not a play thing. This is something very serious that you should pass on to your children and your grandchildren, understanding of who they are, because the system is set up to eradicate us. Okay. And then we have to really understand that. Otherwise, we will be we will be among those who are lost. You'll have an Arabic name. You'll be able to recite Al-Fatiha, but you're going to be lost. So I'm glad that you're doing this presentation. May Allah bless you and all your works and your efforts, and continue. You and I, we could talk again another time, but I'm just thankful. I'm just getting off work, and I'm seeing this, and I said, Akil Fahd is doing what? Professor Muhammad Ezzaldeen? Oh man, I gotta zoom in on this. So, inshallah, brother, we'll talk again.
All right.
Keep up the good works, and inshallah, one day we're gonna meet face to face, and maybe we'll have a Philly cheeseburger together.
Right. But before you go, Sheikh, before you go, let me just say for all those listening, right, or viewing, or may view this later, Sheikh Amin, alhamdulillah, he has spent and graciously given me hours and hours upon his time, basically giving me background history of Adinolahi, some of which, I'm not gonna, go into here, but he, shared with me, and a lot of things he could have said that he didn't. But I just wanted to, acknowledge him as one of the people that has been instrumental in pointing me into the right direction as to where to find or things to investigate as far as it relates to Adinolahi. And, without his gracious willing to, share with me, it would be a much more poor understanding of Professor Ezzaldeen that I would have. So, alhamdulillah, I defer to him. He's very, very knowledgeable in the Dinolai, considering that he is a member, right? Let's not forget that he was a member during the time of Hisham Jabber. That's what I want to just say.
Yeah, well, I was a member until they asked me to leave. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that one day.
Right.
Yeah, I went beyond the limits that they wanted. Every group has their limits.
Every group has a limit,
and some people will say, "Hey, look, you know what? Let's take it another step further," and they were not willing to go that far,
right.
And it caused a little bit of friction. But I say that to say that I did what Ezzaldeen did. I went home. And the people knew who I was when I arrived. This is something that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Ezzaldeen worked as an Egyptologist on the sites of the diggings of the pyramids and all the ancient architecture stuff over in Egypt, in addition to him studying. Okay, he learned this Hamitic Arab history from the ancient people who were there. When they saw him, they knew who he was and what he was looking for. Okay, I can't explain it to you how they knew, because they just know. But this is where he got this. He didn't sit down and make this up while he was sitting in his living room. He went and learned this history of the Hamitic Arab. There's a history behind this. There's a lineage behind this, and it links back to us. But they don't want you to know that you have a divine heritage, you have divine rights when you call this deen. But many of us have not been taught this, so we don't know it. So we're lost, and we can get out into the world and lose our sense of purpose. And then we end up being a tool against what we're supposed to be doing. And this is what, for a professor, he taught the people who they really were, so they will have an inner sense and confidence of being able to present themselves in a very good fashion. Okay, this is something that, inshallah, we'll talk about it another time. I'm not here to bend.
All right, Sheikh.
I'm matter of fact, I'm sitting in my car in the driveway listening to you. I didn't even get out of my car because I didn't want to miss a word that you were saying.
Okay.
So, inshallah, we're going to talk again soon.
I have a question.
Yes.
Though, right? So when you say they recognize, or they knew who you were, they recognized you, what did that look like? Or can you describe the sequence of events that happened that made you recognize that they recognize you?
Well, it's kind of, you know about that inner sense you have. Okay, some of us have it, not everyone, but I won't forget. I went up into what you will call now Nubia, and there were people there in the group who were scientists and guides and stuff. And as soon as they saw me, they watched me. They watched me for a number of days, how I interacted with the people, how I spoke with the people, or how I looked, my body position and everything. And then before I got a chance to leave, they pulled me over and they said, you know, I mean, they knew my name. I knew their name. We know about you people. You were here over 300 years ago and you were taken from us. You're welcome home. You are one of us and you've returned home. Now, these were people that have people abroad in Egypt and in other areas that have a different sense of knowing who we are, but we don't know who we are. You can't teach this in a classroom. You cannot teach this. This is not something that you're going to find in this system that we have here. Okay, and they will come to you. You won't have to come to them. And this has happened to me a number of times, but this one was the biggest one because it came out of, like, I wasn't expecting it at all. And there's one scientist, and he pulled me over, and he sat down and we drank tea, and he smiled so big, and he said, you know, I mean, welcome home, brother. You made it back. Out of all the people who they've taken from here, you've made it back, and you came back whole. You came back with your deen. You came back. You speak the language of the Quran, Arabic. You recite Quran. We heard you making your prayers. Oh yeah, they watched you. They watched me. And they said, "Welcome home. We know that you're one of us. So you might be hundreds of years, but you're one of us. Welcome home." But they came to me. Okay, you can't look for this. This isn't something that you're going to be looking for. It's going to come. If it comes, it's going to come when you're not expecting it, if it's going to come. That's all I can share with you on that. That's all I could tell you right now. The
Makes
rest
sense.
of it, huh?
I said it actually makes sense. I understand.
Yeah, okay. Because you like I said before, and I don't know who I'm talking to.
I'm just the co-host. My name is Khalil. I'm the co-host who put the help put the program together. That's all. Yeah.
And my name is Amin El Khalil. You'll find me on Facebook as Amin Abu Hussein.
Okay. All right.
Amin
Shall I look for you?
Abu Hussein, and I go on there every once in a while. I post some things, but we have to understand about who we are. And when I say who we are, that you understand that you are part of this. You know, Allah created the nations. He didn't leave out the Hamitic the so-called black people. You understand? The black people weren't just a bunch of lower class beings thrown around in Africa. Okay, the old history lines, they gave divinity rights and all that other stuff to the Europeans. But you know, when you read the Quran and when you read the Bible, and I don't know about the Torah, I never read the Torah, but I know when they list the prophets, not one of them came from Europe. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? That's the wake-up call that most folks are missing. Okay, none of them came out of Europe. Nope, they didn't. But they rewrote history to try to erase us and and where we are in the world. If they can smother us with all the stuff that they smothered us with, and we don't recognize who we are, they're going to claim that, yeah, well, you know, Jesus looks like this, looks like a hippie. You know, he looks like, actually he looks like a gay, one of the old pagan gods, Seraphis, who was supposed to be one of the gods of ancient Alexandria. They took that image and the meaning of the Nicene Creed, and they used that image for Jesus. When we know that Jesus looked more like the brother that we see now, Akil Fahd. Okay, now, if they could erase your history, they can assume what your value is, and rewrite history. Got to remember, a lot of things have been rewritten, and they rewrote it for their advantage and for your disadvantage. Okay, that's what we have to understand. Okay, we have a divine link back to the ancient prophets. We're not just a bunch of black folks just wandering around. But when you don't know who you are, and they take your language, your history, your name, your culture, and you don't get a chance to go find it, you're going to be lost in a foreign land. Imagine your grandchildren stolen from you and taken to another land, and everything that you taught them was erased. That's what's happened to us. By Allah's mercy, He put in our hearts a love for Allah to reclaim our deen, first of all. I can't emphasize that each one of us are, and I don't mean to speak too much, but I don't want to say miracles, but we're miracles. In a nation that was buried for over 300 years, we were supposed to have been destroyed. They did everything to us. And I don't have to tell you what they did, because we all know what they did. They did everything you could do to destroy a people. And what happened? We still rose up. One of us rose up and said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. After being buried, can you imagine being buried for 300 years and your descendants still claim this deen? Man, they were hoping to erase that from us. They don't want that here. That's why they bring up gambling. They bring up the gay thing. They bring up the drinking and the drugging and all the other things that are haram. They want the people to do that. They don't want you to believe in Allah. I think I've said enough. That's my khutbah for today. Think about those things. Think about those things. Think about those things. When you read about the prophets, they're not coming out of Europe. They're not. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Think about their lineage, what their linkage is, and what your linkage is to them. Your linkage to them is closer than yours. Believe me. And this is why I know some people are against Islam, against they're black nationalists. They're into black nationalism so thick that they against Islam, against religion, against the Arabs. But people forget that the originals, the ancients, all of them were dark-skinned black people. The ancient Israelites, the ancient Arabs, the ancient Sumerians, the ancient Nubians. Okay, they weren't Caucasians. They weren't. And this is a fact. So when you start studying history, you used to have it laid out right in front of you, but you have to be able to see it and feel it. Inshallah, brother. Inshallah. We'll get there. I don't mean to get emotional. I don't want to get emotional or anything, but we still got a lot of work to do. All I can say is you brothers are doing a great job. Allah bless you. And I'm telling you, I'm sitting in my driveway in my car here. I'm in New Jersey. Okay. And I got off work today. I worked a little bit longer than I should have, but I'm looking and I see Akil Fahd is doing what? Alhamdulillah. I had to tune in, and I had to say something so that we have an understanding about this guy, Muhammad Ezzaldeen. He's been pretty much dusted off. He's not in the books. You hear about him, hear his name, but very few people have done the research that Akil Fahd has done. May Allah bless you, keep you healthy, and bring more information, and also keep not just his name, but his mission and understanding who we are. Okay, the UAA, as far as I know, it does still exist, but I don't know I cannot say at what point it does. I have not been in touch with them in quite a while, and that's because I've had other missions that I've had to take care of for myself. But I do know that what is taught by Professor Ezzaldeen and is alive and well in many small communities, households, and throughout not only Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, and other areas. And this is some of what keeps the Muslims motivated. Okay, alhamdulillah, you're Muslim. But what do we need communities. We need living entities where we can take care of ourselves. We're not supposed to be all scattered and willy-nilly. We're supposed to come together. And that is, it's going to take a while because we got a few things to get out of the way. But once we get those things out of the way, this is what we really need to do, because this monster, this system is setting up to try to erase us. They're going to erase you. That's what and they don't get you. They're coming after your kids and your grandkids. Okay. And that's what I see coming down the pike. Okay. Especially, I don't know if I should say this, but there's certain theologies that they're putting out there that it's okay to be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. It's okay to go out and break all the laws that Allah has said don't do. Okay. You know, and so what happens is you get lost in the source, even if you have a Arabic name or a Muslim name, and you have to be very careful. You know, not just I'm saying you got to talk to your kids and your grandkids, all right, to keep them away from some of this stuff they're trying to destroy our people. They destroy you, okay. Inshallah, Akil, we'll talk more about that on another line that's not as public. But
all right, Sheikh.
I think I've said enough. Allah bless you all.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh.
Stay well, brothers. And inshallah, Akil, when you do another presentation, send me a quick message so I give me a heads up. Not because I want to talk or say anything, but because I want to hear your presentation. You're doing very well, brother. You're doing very well. Allah, protect you and keep you on the mark. Khalil, I don't know you. I never met you, but I thank you also for supporting Akil and being there, because this is the beginning of how trees grow, with small seeds coming together and trying to plant things and keep our hearts and our minds alive, inshallah. All right, take care.
Thank you.
I'm going to go on mute, and
thank you.
You're welcome. And you can continue without me. Just watch.
Right. No problem.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam to Allah, Sheikh. Khalil,
Okay.
I think someone else hand was up. I think it was Steve.
Yeah, he should be able to talk. Steve?
Yes, thank you. Brother Akil, it was a very interesting presentation. And I guess I had two questions. One was I was reading about Professor Ezzaldeen beforehand, and I was struck by how, in terms of, he also, the flags it said he used as symbols basically were like the green flag you showed, and also a U.S. flag, and which made me think very similar to what, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but which is very similar to what Imam Worthy Muhammad used. So I'd be interested to know how you would compare or contrast what the beliefs and practices of Professor Ezzaldeen and his organization with what Imam Worthy Muhammad implemented with Nation of Islam.
Yeah. So with that, good question, Steve. But so different units within Ad-Din Allahi took different approaches to the utilization of the American flag. Some, they went and members joined the military and stuff like that. But Professor Ezzaldeen himself, when he was given a talk, this is recorded, it's documented in the files on Ad-Din Allahi, he only mentioned the flag, as Sheikh Amin had elaborated to earlier, about it being the cross swords of Ismail. He never mentioned about the American flag. I don't know how that part got introduced, maybe through the different groups or something like that from different units that may have come through. But as far as what he articulated, for example, at that meeting, when he brought all of the groups together, he only spoke about the nationalization of Islam and an Islamic identity and the so-called Negroes reclaiming their original identity. He didn't have like this duality like Drew Ali had, Mr. Drew Ali had of Moorish Americans. He didn't speak in those terms.
Okay, thank you. And one other question I had is like you would
see if you look at this picture, Steve. If you look at the picture here, it's solely the Dino Lahi flag that they had. It was no American flag with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And another question I had was concerned education. You would start to talk about like wisdom or House of Wisdom. Could you tell more about that? And also, I assume the villages that they ran would have had their own schools. And what were those like?
So the actual, like, I don't have any of the books of pedagogy that they operated from in terms of curricula. Like he taught different aspects of history, of the lineage from different sources and even some sources of Egyptology, but I don't have the like a syllabus or anything that I can point to with precise knowledge to say this exactly what he taught. What I do know is that he had the schools that he called schools of wisdom that function in conjunction with the Dino Lahi units. So for every location that had a unit, right, or AAU AA unit, it would have a school of wisdom. But as far as like, I know broadly like what he discussed, and Sheikh Amin elaborated on it far more than I could. That was what he taught, but it was not, like I said, I haven't found any books that he actually taught for him to say with precision that this is what he taught. So I kind of abstain from that because other than he taught, the people Arabic and the Quran. But as you know, during that time, there was not much hadith that were available or anything like that. And then in later years, some of the organizations or the units, people that were members, they started learning from, I can't think of the name of the book right now, but it was a book that was published in, I believe, 1944, 1933. I can't. The name of the book escapes me right now. But they taught from that. But it was no evidence that Sheikh Ezzaldeen himself actually taught from that book.
Okay. And the schools of wisdom were not just for like children, but for all members of the organization would go there to learn about Islam.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Akil, pardon me.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. In regards to the flag, the concept of the flag, very vital because each nation has a flag. Each nation has a flag. For the Hamitic Arab nation who are Muslim, the flag that you see in that picture, that was the flag. Mm-hmm. My uncle used to have that picture in his living room in Ezzaldeen village before he moved out, he went abroad, and I think it got lost in transition. Another uncle lost it. He passed away, and I don't know what happened to his possessions. But I've seen it for myself, and that's what the flag. Huh?
No, what I was saying, Sheikh, was, and I was trying to explain to Steve, is that it was always thought of as a national organization, even though the
Yeah.
original charter came out of Camden.
Yes.
Always
Yes.
articulated as a national organization.
Yes,
It wasn't
right.
just
Yes.
like a local
national
thing. That's what I was just
organization.
trying to point out.
And that it was therefore a nation of people who were, reclaiming their rights.
Right.
That's basically what it was. All right, look, I'm gonna go inside here. I'll let you all go. I mean, I'm still sitting in my car. But this was very good. This made my day. Inshallah, we'll talk soon, brother. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam. So any other questions from any other people sitting here? And I'm also looking at the chat to make sure that I don't see anything there. I don't. Brother Akil, so one, we really appreciate this, man. Definitely a treat for me as well. Just, fortunate. And is there anything you want to add? Because it is now it's an hour and a half running now. So anything you want to add?
Yeah. I just want to say that, I cannot overemphasize how pivotal he was. Like, yes, there are a number of men and women who were pioneering Islam in America. Yes, there was, right? And I don't want to take anything away from the accomplishments or the endeavors of anyone, right? I just want to be clear with that. Yet, it has to be said that in terms of someone broadly proselytizing Islam on a wide area and have it be orthodox, orthopraxy Islam, he was the first, right? I do know that there are other people and there are other names, but he was peerless. He was the mentor to all of these other people because he actually went and studied first, right? And so when he came back, he had the understanding of Islam. He had the understanding of Arabic. He had learned different aspect of Egyptian heritage, right? And so with that, he had a larger, how can I say? He had more tools, I'll say it that way, to give the people Islam from than what others, even though this does not take away from the fact that the other people also, sacrificed and toiled to bring Islam in America. He himself studied Arabic, right, and brought it back to the people, right, and also the understanding that the people needed, and as Sheikh Amin has eloquently already said, the nationality, right, that was a very important aspect of what he also taught with Adin Allahi to, basically help revitalize the people. You know what I'm saying? With the understanding of Islam proper.
Yeah. Was there any interactions between him? Obviously, there's obviously any overlap or interactions recorded between him and Elijah Muhammad?
No, not that I'm aware of. Nor did they have like any documentation of the interaction with the brothers that were in Adin Allahi that were in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I can say is this: in Detroit is Detroit was a very dynamic place, right? All of the people, for the most part, right, that either said they were Muslim, claimed they're Muslim, or were actually Muslim, all of them kind of knew of the other's work, right? You just couldn't be there and not know of the other parties. Now, that doesn't mean just because they were aware of each other that they actually interacted, you know, because there were brothers there that were practicing Islam, you know, that still interacted with the nation. You know what I'm saying? Because they lean more towards, hey, I would rather deal with the nation than deal with the regular, you know, schools. Like I know like a brother who sent his daughter, he was Muslim, practicing Muslim, he was Muslim, his father was Muslim, his grandfather was Muslim. And I'm talking about this brother, he's now like 80 something years old, right? Mm-hmm. But he sent his daughter to Muhammad schools. Why? Because he didn't want her being indoctrinated by the public schools. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's not that I'm trying to create like, oh, it was just like this hard buffer between the people. There was no interaction and nothing like that. But I'm talking about in terms of organizationally and the practice of Islam, right? He was peerless in doing that at that time. Not to say nobody else was, you know, doing anything, but he was just, you know, ahead of his time, as the Sheikh was saying.
Right. Okay.
I mean, to have a functioning community, a functioning agrarian community where the people had their own animals, they had their own, producing their own food. All of that was done in Jabal Arabia. You know what I'm saying? They had Ezzaldeen village where the people live. You know what I'm saying? And other Muslims could come and live amongst Muslims, right? So, you know, that was pioneering work, and we don't even have that to this day right now.
Right. Right.
Well, I mean, there are some communities. Let me take that back. I know the Muslim of Americas, those communities, they do exist. So I don't want to, you know, disregard their work.
Right. Okay. Well, you know, I would also like to know, like, you know, what the contributing factors. We don't have to talk about this now because I know we're moving into the 2-hour mark. Like, what were the contributing factors into where that community went and why didn't it last? You know what I'm saying? Those communities that community that was self-sustaining.
Well, I think it's typical of well, I would say endemic of the Muslim experience amongst the indigenous Black folks, African American, whatever people want to call themselves, amongst this group of people, the descendants of people, Africans that were once enslaved, that group of people, we've been having a difficult time of sustaining generationally intact communities, right? Yeah. Alhamdulillah, we may have people that have multi-generational Muslims. Alhamdulillah, it's a lot of that, you know, both in Detroit, New York, Philly, you know what I'm saying? Alhamdulillah, that's beautiful. But in terms of communities, like for example, like in Detroit, you have Bangladeshi communities, Yemeni communities, Arab communities, Lebanese communities, you know, Muslims from the Bekaa Valley, you know, in Lebanon, that area, Syria, right? Those people, you know, they have created different, carved out different enclaves in the Detroit area, and generationally, they sustain those. Whereas the African American, no matter what trajectory you come from within Islam, right, to the point that you make it to Islam, right, we are not generationally living in those same neighborhoods that the grandparents was when they were Muslim, or not even the parents. So what happened is the children grow up, move away.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I see a lot of factors for why that might be, but okay, I get that. That makes sense.
There's various factors of why that happened, but that's what still, even today, continuously happens to us. Like, I can't think of a single masjid where African American, right? A single masjid where the entirety community around the masjid is African American or Black or whatever name, right? I don't want to, do that, but whatever the people identify with, that from that group where they've established community life, the imam and everybody lives around the masjid, and it's generational.
Right.
Now, it has happened a number of times where an imam, a leader, goes to an area, they carve out an area, alhamdulillah, and it's going. But by this time that second generation hit,
it's true.
It's washed.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. True. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I'm always, I'm interested in, like, how, I've had the privilege of, obviously being under Amir and, hearing these things. And what I'm doing is I'm connecting the dots. Okay, what's the parallels between how this and how they fell? How did they rise? How did they fall? And where can we find a common denominator of good? And where can we find a common denominator of what went wrong? And so that we, you know what I'm saying? Because that's tracing ourselves back so that we can learn from what we, learn from the past. So,
Right. And that's another reason why I talk about Professor Ezzaldeen so much, is because coming from the Jamaat that I come from, the Imam that I have bay'ah to, everybody knows Imam Asim, and the Dar Islam movement, and then coming to Al Ummah, really it's just the Dar. Those brothers, all of them are Dar. They come from the Dar Islam movement, but it's pretty much the same thing, right? So we have to look and look at it and say, okay, wait a minute. If these same patterns are happening, what do we need to do? Take a step back and look at it and say, what do we need to do to actively stop that from happening? To break the cycle of this same thing. And it can't just be simplistic, follow the Quran and Sunnah. You know what I'm saying? It has to be a more dynamic approach to understand, right? Now, I know we have two ends of it. One, we don't want the people to be unknowledgeable, so they have to understand Tawheed and all those other things. Alhamdulillah, right? But then on the other hand, it has to be simple enough for the people, for the lay person to understand and implement, because everybody is not a scholar. And if that's going to be the litmus test, that you have to have a scholarly understanding of Tawheed, or you have to have a scholarly understanding of practice, you're not even going to get off the ground. You know what I'm saying? Everybody is not going to be a scholar. So you have to have a balance between knowing what you're supposed to do, and then the implementation, make it simple enough to implement, and then what's going to be the cohesion, the glue to keep everybody together. Because clearly you've had very, very sincere people who have created organizations after organizations throughout our history, right? Since the turn of the 19th century almost, that have been trying to establish Islam in America. So now the thing is, how is it and what is tying these other groups that are coming here that really haven't really come here since but the late 70s, right? Some have been here prior to that, but for most, late 70s, and they're still able to create these enclaves, right? I mean, it's just reasonable. You look at best practices and see what works. That's the way my approach would be to it, right? So that's we got to hurdle, man. We got to hurdle.
No doubt. All right. Well, I don't want to hijack my brother's Zoom anymore. We'll keep it. So inshallah, we'll keep it there.
And I gotta
Jazakallah
go eat,
khair.
man. I haven't even ate iftar, man.
Man, I might be out there in a couple of weeks. I'm gonna have to grab some of that food for you one of them days, man. I think I might be out there for like a week or something. Cause that stuff be looking good, brother. Your food be looking too good. I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna make an order. If I make an order, when I come out there, I'm gonna put an order in. I'm gonna put an order in. I need some of that salmon. I need some of that seafood. I gotta be watching. I'm watching. I'm paying attention. All right.
Right. We can work with that.
All right, cool. All right, appreciate it. So everyone, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. That was definitely, like I said, a treat for me. Muhammad Ezzaldeen, is so much treasure there. It's like we there's so much more to be. Like I want to actually. Well, this is one of the exhibits that I think that we have to really, and we're going to talk about this offline. Creating a proper exhibit with you got so much documentation I've seen. So, we're actually, and just to let everyone know, we are coming down the pipe for creating a museum app, iOS and an Android app, right? And one of the things that we're going to have is virtual exhibits. And so things like with all these papers that you have and these images, we want to put this stuff together and have our own almost Wikipedia of sorts, if you get my drift, right? Be able to check each other.
Absolutely.
So that's in the works.
Important.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I think it's important for people to see the articles themselves, not just see references to them, but actually see the articles themselves as they were written, not just retyped, but the actual, you know what I'm saying, what was written.
Yeah, and that's what, exactly. In the exhibit, we'll be able to do that. Like you have these articles, you have actually photos of the actual articles, and then, when we get the physical thing back going, and we'll have those as well. So, inshallah. So, again, Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you, man. For taking the time and doing this for us. It's very much needed. And inshallah, may Allah unite us, and make us and help us to be maybe that generation that figures it out.
Ameen.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Take care, bro. See you later, inshallah.
All right.
All right.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.